Hello again, my name's Gabe Zollner. Hey, I got a question. Let's assume that there's a change in the Oval Office and the guy's gone. I don't necessarily believe that's going to happen, but let's assume that it happens. And let's assume we get a new president that's sensible and has the best interest of Americans at heart. And that would exclude Hillary Rodham Clinton. I don't know who might become the next president, if anyone. But again, let's assume that that happens. What do you think the first thing that has to happen? Well, I think Congress needs to be disassembled. Yeah. I've done a lot of videos on this, and I haven't made any recently, so this is mainly for the new viewers. And thank God I've got a lot of those. The problem with Congress is that it's become a corrupt sewer. When you have individuals that have access to the means and the ways to make millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, a lot of them take advantage of that. And that explains why so few members of Congress were wealthy when they first came into Congress. There's a few. Darrell Issa is one of them. I gotta believe you would even have to include that nut job, the Secretary of State, because he married into it. It wasn't that he had it on his own, he married into it. Married to Heinz Ketchup. But the majority of millionaires and multimillionaires came into Congress with meager means. Nancy Pelosi would be one of them. Her husband, I believe, also would be another one of them. And now they're both multimillionaires. I think 48% of the members of Congress are multimillionaires. And the reason that is they have access and they have the ability to become millionaires due to insider trading being one of the reasons. I'm certain that there's a lot of them that get paid under the table for their contribution by doing what certain groups have asked them to do. Harry Reid is probably one of those individuals. In either case, what has to happen is we have to establish term limits on members of Congress. And they can't do what Jeffrey the Flake did. He was a congressman for 10 years. He was elected 5 times, re-elected, and he said he wouldn't be after, I think, the third, but then he said he lied. He actually said he lied. You can Google that. He says, I lied. Well, at least he's honest about lying. In either case, they shouldn't be allowed to go from one to the other. In other words, they should be allowed to serve 2 terms, 2 two-year terms for a congressman and 2 6-year terms for a senator. And after that, they join the real world. They don't get the insane benefits that they get. They join the real world, period. The other thing that has to happen is they have to be tested on the material contained within the bill. And the reason for that's obvious. They've proven this countless times. They don't read what's in the bill. And they just vote based on party line. So what's the point? We don't need members of Congress to do that. We don't have to pay them what we're paying them. We don't have to pay their staffs and their offices and everything else. Just get rid of the whole thing, submit a bill, and say, hey, you know what, that's what they would do anyway. So what has to happen is they have to be tested. And the way you test them is no different than the way you test someone that gets a driver's license. They get access to the material, they read the material, they become familiar with the material, and then you test their knowledge based on what's within the material. If they pass, they get their license. If they don't, they don't. The same thing has to happen with bills. If a senator or a congressman understands what's within the bill, then he or she will pass the test and they can vote on it. If they can't pass the test, they can't be allowed to vote on it. And if they do it a number of times where they fail, they're removed. The other problem with the way the system's set up right now is there's no way you can remove a sitting senator. You can't remove them. And that's wrong. If in the case of the senator from Arizona, who tends to cross over to the other side of the aisle more often than not, he's not doing the work that the citizens of Arizona elected him to do. So when they do it more than, I don't know, 5, more than 6 times, they're removed. You cannot allow them to remain in power for 6 years when they're going against their constituents. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is really simplistic. And if this country is going to survive, which right now is rather doubtful, but if it is going to survive, Congress needs to be completely overhauled. The only ones that should be allowed to remain are the new ones. The rest need to go. And they also have to pass a certain IQ test, like that guy Johnson, who thought that Guam would tip over because there was a buildup of military on the island. This guy is a lawmaker, and he's an idiot. Go Google the guy that thought that Guam would tip over, Johnson. What's interesting about Johnson, unlike most members of Congress, he at least worked as an attorney for about, I think, 20 years before he went in to Congress. The rest of these clowns, the majority of them, never had a job. They never signed the front of a check. They only signed the back of a check. And that's why they live in their own world. They can't relate to the real world. Just a couple of ideas that I thought I'd throw out there to try to bring some of the new viewers up to speed as to what I think has to happen with Congress, assuming the country is not totally destroyed by the usurper. Let me know what you think. I told you what I think.